Hey, Good News family. This is Tana Heineman, the host of our Now What podcast. This is where we unpack Sunday's message and we talk about how to practically apply it to our everyday lives. I love that you're here with us, and I love that we get the opportunity to spend more time with our pastors and have them teach us even more what the Word has to say about our everyday lives. We learned from Jesus that one of the best ways to grow is in community together. So join us as we unpack Sunday's message. Hey, Good News family. It is so good to have you with us again this week. I have Pastor Greg, of course, because he preached this weekend, but I also have for the very first time, Emily Fern.
Hello.
So happy. And she is feeling a bit under the weather and
very pregnant.
Very pregnant. So living large and in charge. So we'll have... Her best voice isn't here today, but I'm really glad that you said yes. So thank you for joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about like who you are, what you do here? I don't know, anything you think we might want to know about you.
Yeah, so I'm Emily Fern. I have been working in kids ministry for about 7 years now. So that's what I do here on staff. And we have our 4th baby on the way. So we have 3 other kids at home. And yeah.
If you didn't catch it, her last name is Fern. She's married to Pastor Isaiah, our youth pastor. That's a handful right there. Yeah. I don't know how you do it.
It's fun.
Good.
Definitely fun.
We were actually talking offline just about, you know, your oldest and following in his dad's footsteps, I should say.
Yes.
So, yes, and how you navigate that
Yeah.
with personalities and whatever.
Yeah.
But
Loves his dad.
yes, that's so good. He looks just like his dad, too. There's no
He's a little
question.
mini me.
Okay, so for reference in time, this is the week of daylight savings time. Do you guys care? Do you love it? How's it treating you?
Just seems dumb.
Seems dumb to you?
Yeah, just
But then we get
It's not arbitrary.
more daylight in the summer.
right. But wouldn't it be better to just not change?
And just
Yeah.
have more daylight now. Like literally, I just got excited like a week ago. Like when I get up in the morning, the sun's out, and now you just took it away from me. So I could swing that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just quit it.
Yeah,
Now-
I agree.
You're in a different world
With
because
kids.
I'm so thankful I don't go through the time change with small children anymore.
So actually the spring forward one, I feel like you like as a parent
Okay.
because the kids sleep in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the one that we like when we gain an hour of sleep that I don't like because
Yes.
then the kids are up earlier.
Okay. So this one's the okay one.
Yes, this one's the okay one.
Yeah, I don't miss those days with doing that with kids. But all right, let's jump into the message. I'm really excited about
Why
it.
don't you like kids?
No.
Wow.
I love kids. I love my children. I love other people's children. I just don't like doing it during daylight savings time. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I promise. Scout's honor.
No suspect.
Okay, listen, I'm going to be bold right now with you. This is our second.
Are you flipping me off?
No.
Is that your version?
Actually, do you know what? I was just at Disney last week, and I learned that like all the statues, this is a stupid fact that I'm going to give you.
That's
but-
awesome. Love
okay.
it.
There's
Do
all
it.
these statues with Walt Disney there, and he's always got his hand out, like, you know, with his fingers like this. Well, it's because he was a smoker, big time smoker.
Oh.
And that was like before smoking was not
Yeah, it
great.
was a
So
thing.
the
Yeah.
statues would be authentic to him. My brother was just telling me this fact,
Yeah.
who lives in LA. And so then when smoking became not so cool, they took the cigarette
Cigarette
out
out.
of the statue, and he's like this. But if you also pay attention, they have trained the staff to double point, and that's what they did in the media. They said, well, the
Nice.
reason Walt looks like that is because that's how he points. And so then, yeah, when you'd be getting motioned onto a ride or whatever, they're doing it with 2 fingers. So
Learn something
anyways,
every day.
Nice.
yeah,
Love
that's
it.
my dumb, stupid fact for the day.
We're
You love
so
it?
much better. I
Okay,
love it.
right? You have something
Love
to share.
it.
I hope it was accurate. Yeah. Shout out to my brother if it wasn't accurate and I've now repeated it to the public. Great.
Tana told us this.
Tana told us. Okay, you had a really great title for your sermon. We are in the second and final sermon of our evangelism series that we called Be Bold, and you had a title that I loved. What was it?
Pizza Hut isn't great.
Well, no, that was a subtitle.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what was your title?
Introvert's Guide to Evangelism.
Introvert's Guide to Evangelism. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm actually like cut down the middle, but probably
Nice.
more extrovert.
More
Nice.
extrovert. Okay.
Yeah.
You're clearly an extrovert.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
No, absolutely. But I love I never really liked the idea of introvert. I felt like it was a negative statement, and then it was defined as where do you recharge?
Yeah.
And it instantly went, oh, by myself.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no question. That doesn't. So but I am, like I said on Sunday, I'm also hyperactive. So, and I'm not afraid of like speaking and stuff like that. So and many pastors are extroverts, so you can kind of think that, oh, that's what it is. No, I feel, technically the word would be safest in a smaller group of people that I really like. That we, like I've gone out of my way to create that in certain places when we move to different places.
Do you feel drained after you've like had to preach a couple sermons, or you've had to be at an event where you're with people all day? Does that drain you, or does it energize you?
Yeah, it doesn't energize me, but I don't really think of it as draining. I'm tired now from yesterday, but to be super honest, I weigh more than I should, and I don't exercise. So standing up for 2 hours is just wearing. So it was, and then a meeting, and then another thing last night, and so it's more just naturally tired. But I don't. I enjoy that people are around. I don't hate people, but also if you were like, "Hey, we're just going to spend 30 minutes in silence," I'd probably be like, "Sweet."
I love it. Well, with the focus on evangelism and also acknowledging, and actually, whether you're an introvert or not, the word evangelism is kind of a weird word.
Can be, yeah.
It can mean weird things to different people, right? The idea of it, the concept, it's a little bit scary. And you stripped it down. You kept it super simple. You read to us out of 1 Peter 3. And really, like the main point, you read us a few verses, but the main point in there, instead, you must worship Christ as Lord of your life. And if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. But do this in a gentle and respectful way. I love that. So you summed up evangelism as like, do good and trust God. You said, don't worry. Don't be afraid. Just be ready to explain it. And if someone asks you about your hope, then tell them. Like very, very basic. I noticed even when I was looking back at this verse, after you read it to us, how in verse 15 where it says, worship Christ as the Lord of your life. If he isn't the Lord of my life, then it is going to clearly affect my desire to tell everybody about him.
It should.
Right? So he just starts it out with, let's just start there. Worship Christ as the Lord of your life. And then if someone asks you about that hope, why do you worship him as the Lord of your life? You can't not tell them because he's so important to you. And I think three of us, we represent different backgrounds and I think pretty different personalities, I'm pretty sure. Even though I would have thought you were more introvert than extrovert. So I'm really surprised about that one. But when you hear like worship Christ as the Lord of your life, does it naturally speak to you, this necessitates telling people about him? Does it speak evangelism to you, or what do you hear?
I'll go first. I would say no, and I would say that would be part of the verse, or if I was reading as a younger person, that would be part that I don't really know what it means. So it would be, I don't know how many people do this. Have you ever reading a book and you just see names and you just kind of blow past the names because it's like that. You just said a name that I don't know what to do with that, and nor do I feel a tension about it. I'm like, this is just move on. And so I could say it didn't really inspire anything. Now, when I got to the point that I started thinking more about that kind of stuff, then I think it has kind of, what, if worship, for example, a line of thought would be I like music time in worship, and we call that worship, but I think worship's more than that. Then I see this, worship Christ, and then it's attached to a response to kind of a bigger threat. I think putting this passage in context is Peter's clearly writing to a group of people that not everything that's happening to them is happy. There's threats, there's challenges that are coming, so you don't say, hey, hold up under suffering if suffering's not one of the possibilities. And so within that, he's saying, don't be afraid as you share. And so to worship Christ within this kind of tension. So this is possible. And one of my worshipful responses is to allow that hope to be shared would be the way I'd break it all down. So.
Yeah. Like regardless of what I'm going through, or regardless of even if I'm afraid to share my faith or something with someone, it's like his hope makes us have to do it. Like I need to be ready to explain it because he's worth it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I feel like we're on a slow start, but it might be that we're dragging.
No, you're great.
Okay. What does evangelism look like to you, Emily?
I mean, it reminds me of even what Isaiah preached about, was just the relational side of it. And like he had also mentioned, the apartment life ministry, I think really taught us that on a practical sense. You know, we are believers, and we care about God's creation. We care about people. And so getting to know them and getting to know their lives and their stories was really important. And, you know, even though we're not doing apartment life anymore, we live in a neighborhood. And so we bring that to our neighbors, introducing ourselves. And I think it kind of starts out as like maybe action, like through action. And then I think that relational side can lead to the questions and like, you know, why would you do this for us? Or, you know, why would you go above and beyond like that? Or, you know, whatever the case may be. And so I definitely resonate more with the relational side of evangelism.
Yeah, nice. For sure. Even just thinking about how the way we do neighborhood life anymore, it's like you drive right in, I close the door, you know, I'll send my son out to get the mail, roll in the trash cans. Like it's very easy to not engage. And it seems like a very bottom line decision we have to make as carriers of Jesus is a willingness to interact and make it happen, because you could easily just be doing your own busy life. You've got kids running around. You're trying to, you know, repair your house and do your yard and all these kind of things. And then you're pausing to interact with neighbors. That has just become, I don't know, it's just really less and less popular. People are just in their own busy world. They have their community and you don't engage. So even right there, neighborhood evangelism needs to happen. Okay, you laid out the ground rules, introverts' ground rules.
And these are just my opinions. They really are.
I love them.
I agree with them. Don't get me
They're
wrong.
like there's three of them. They're so basic, and I feel like everything fits in those three. People are not a project,
right?
And very easily, depending on the era of time where we became Christians, it was all about a project, a number, taking a track out and knocking on someone's door, or stopping them in the gas station or whatever, and they're suddenly frightened for their life because they're wondering what in the world you're talking to them for. And people were a project. And then I could come back and say, I went out with this group and 17 people gave their life to Jesus today or whatever. And I'm not downplaying that, people who are going out and doing evangelism. But there is a tension for me, at least, of did they feel like a project? Did they feel pressured? Did they say it just to get you to leave them alone? You know, I don't know. You said number 2, the path to faith, like we have already talked about, is relational, not argumentative. It used to be high debate. Do you remember that era? Like, I feel like maybe I was in like high school and maybe it was the Christian school I was in. I don't know, but it was all about debating people. And you kind of hit on it yesterday when you said apologetics. It was about, could I out-debate you? Then you'd have to say my God's right or something. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not supposed to be argumentative. And the third one is that there's a directive, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Jesus says to do it. We have to do it.
Do something.
Do something. Talk to us a little bit more about how you said you avoided engagement with people because of ground rules 1 and 2, project, relational, not argumentative, and you would just kind of avoid that. Why?
Yeah, if I see the standard as these things that I disagree with, then I just disassociate from it. Someone's going to be offended deeply with what I'm getting ready to say.
Perfect.
So I'm going to keep saying it. I I've only voted once before 2016.
Wow. Okay. There's a reason.
Yeah. Because I don't believe in any of it.
Okay.
So that's where someone can be offended. I'm not asking anyone to agree with me.
Yeah.
I'm not evangelizing on this one. I'm saying that there's something in me that if we can't have conversations about it, if you're giving me an either or about, and I disagree with both sides, I'm going to separate from that. And so if what evangelism to me was people just saying, oh, here's the Bible. Now that doesn't work for most people. I'm me and in a certain place and I was ready to go. I mean, that doesn't happen a lot. But just because that happened for me doesn't mean that I think the opposite should happen or that there should be this aggressive version. I just, I add in certain historical stuff. Well, if we conquer them, then we make them Christians. And but then even on the specifically people are not projects thing, a very good friend of mine, still a Christian, but when I first met her experience with church, and again, she was still Christian, but not going to church, and knew she was called, whatever called means, but into ministry. That's where, I mean, there was no question, but she had no route back because of her experience of abuses, meaning that everybody's project. This is how we approach not just evangelism, but this is how we approach discipleship. And it's either you're going 100% all the time or you don't really believe.
Yeah.
And this either or stuff is damaging. And so we literally had a conversation. It was like, oh, I just think you want it for, and I'm like, oh, I don't care. I don't. And to the degree that may bother people who are super, there's people that Emily can reach and talk to with her, who she is and her style and stuff. I will never have a voice in their lives. And I would even argue, nor should I. I may damage the people that she has a voice with. And probably less so than vice versa because of personality differences. But there are people that I truly care about that don't go to church now because of how aggressive things have been, how the style that they've been doing. And I don't agree. I think that completely running away from it isn't doing good thought either. But so back to the, I'm weaving a long thing here, but the path to that is not to make more projects, but instead to connect relationally, like you're talking about. I'm not ripping on intentional evangelism. I'm not ripping on anything anyone loves. I may, if we get into details, if you tell me about it, but I wouldn't rip on it. I just may not agree with it. I may not go with you on that particular path. But fundamentally, we're talking about you don't want to be treated as a project. You don't want to get a cold call from some sales thing, and we're not doing that.
And I feel like that's like where the relationship comes into play. I've even been caught in like treating people like a project, I think. And it's hard because it can be very discouraging. And I think you just put so much weight on yourself that you have to save them. And when you're not seeing that happen, it could be really frustrating. And you almost like want nothing to do with people anymore because you're like, people are crazy.
Absolutely.
And I think that can be dangerous. And I feel like our main goal should just be obedience and sharing the truth and love and pray for them and let God do the rest because it could be really hard.
I think giving that permission, like you discussed on Sunday, of doing my part, and whether that's planting seed, I think it was in PI's first message where, you know, how many several times it takes of somebody hearing the truth before they make a decision. And he had said, a speaker that he had heard said 18 or 19. And just remembering our role in that. And then I also find the challenge of then there's people, maybe they're the people who have the gift of evangelism, I'm not sure, who can like I mean, spark up a conversation with
Yeah.
anybody
It has to be.
and close the deal. Like, how in the world, we're talking about it. Oh my gosh, there's going to be a couple of people who are going to listen to this and they're going to pick on me about it. But we're getting ready to go on a global trip. And there's conversation about maximizing your time in the plane and who you might be sitting with.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't do that. Like,
No.
I'm like, those poor people, if they have AirPods in their ears before I've even sat down, they're giving a
Absolutely.
very clear message. And I know that these people would agree with that. And you have to be listening to the Holy Spirit. Because if I get on the
Sure.
plane with an agenda for a project, that's a problem. That's exactly what we're speaking to.
Yes.
If I get on the plane, Holy Spirit, if you open the door,
Right.
I'll take it. Because I do know there are times where I can be very clearly, I'm getting in that plane and putting my AirPods in
Right.
right away and making it very clear, you might be willing to talk and I'm not. And so
Right.
I think that's where it's preparation with the Holy Spirit of like, okay, I'm in.
Right.
If you're going to do this thing, I'm in. But there's tension for me even of how you even start the conversation, and where do you go? So, hey, do you know Jesus?
Random person.
Yeah,
You just
random
fly into a
person.
random place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, have you guys ever shared your faith on a plane?
No,
Have you?
No.
No. Okay.
it would have to come up naturally.
Yeah.
Just in the conversation, right? I think it would
Right.
be like they ask what I do, where
Right.
I work, and I think sometimes that's a barrier for people is we get really caught up in we have to have these certain questions that we ask and
Or,
then
like, script even.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and rather than just intentional responses to questions,
Sure.
making sure you bring up your faith, whatever it is.
Sure.
If you're talking about your kids and you went through a situation but I really believe that Jesus is right there with me in this situation. Like, we can make an intentional choice of what words we say
Yeah.
that can help lead us into a spiritual conversation.
Sure.
Right?
Or just being like aware of like maybe the book that they're reading or even talked about like neighbors. And I know for me, like I wrestle with my flesh. Like it doesn't want to always be willing to be there for people, but
Yeah.
like noticing I haven't noticed my neighbor outside. And so like sending a text and like, hey, is everything okay? And, something hard is going on. And then
Yeah.
that can lead into a conversation. I think just being in tune with the Holy Spirit and being aware of
Yeah.
your surroundings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to, in my point of view on how I do evangelism, I don't want to, on one side, I don't want to disparage the path other people are trying to figure out with evangelism or what they're doing. Or if you are meet your neighbors kind of person and do that and stuff, then I want you to do that. If you don't know whether you are a talk to the other people on a plane person and you figure out that you are or aren't by doing it, I'm a huge fan. An example of that would be when I first began helping in ministry way back, so like 1992.
I don't think Emily wasn't even born yet. I don't think.
Possibly.
So, yeah.
I was born in
Okay.
1992.
It was kids ministry. I know today that I am not wired for kids ministry. The reason I know that is because I did kids ministry. I didn't hate it. I just realized I'm wound a little too tight to take care of other people's kids. Because especially at that stage, straight out of the Army, I was like, no, you act this way because I'm in charge. I was way too wound, but what it created was a true appreciation for kids ministry. I love it. I love things that people are really good at, especially ones that I'm not. So you saying not only do you have 4 kids, and you do kids ministry, I'm just like,
Yes.
wow. I mean that sincerely. I'm genuinely like appreciative because that means I don't have to do it. But there's so many things. I just love it. I just stop. Anyway, I'm not angry at it. I was
It's
just
okay.
being expressive. Are you okay?
I'm good.
Okay. I just thought it'd be funny. Anyway, now I've lost my train of thought. But I don't want to disparage how people are doing evangelism. At the same time, I will probably push back if you try to decide that your version is the thing I have to be doing.
Yeah.
And as a high D, I'm going to also probably defend others like me. So I actually have to be even more aware that I'm not being mean about it, because I receive it as an attack. Like, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it. You said, well, we're supposed to be going to our neighbors. And I'm like, probably not going to happen. Well, you should. I don't receive your should. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
If my hardest thing is, well, then you should be good at everything that I'm good at too. So here's a stack of books. Go, let's talk about them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to do that. I get that.
That's a good point.
So back your stuff up off me.
Yeah.
And I'll take my stuff off you.
Yeah.
And let's both be good at things.
Yeah, that's good.
Doesn't mean I don't have any impetus to see people come to Christ. Nor does it mean you don't have any weight on you to to learn something.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just good at different things.
We haven't offered this class in a while, and we're looking at offering it again this fall, but we had a class here called We Disciple. And the goal of the class is to try to remove as many barriers as possible to us discipling people. So the word discipling people we take from what you pointed out to us is the mandate from God in Matthew 28. Therefore, go make disciples of all nations. And we say, I don't know I'm not going to disciple anybody. I don't even know what that means or whatever.
Right.
And as we were preparing that content, we were talking about whether evangelism and discipleship, are they two separate things? Are they the same or whatever? And where I landed is they're two parts of the same coin, because they go hand in hand, especially in the idea of sharing your story, in my opinion. That was one of the ways you talked about. That's like a basic of how you evangelize, because we get all caught up in what it might need to look like, or how much Bible do I know, or whatever, and then we say, I'm not qualified, I'm not able to answer their questions or whatever, so I'm not going to evangelize. And we also say, I'm not going to disciple, because that's a weird word. But if it's the same, if it's two parts of the same coin and they work hand in hand, because sharing my story actually accomplishes both. I'm telling them, I'm introducing them to who this Jesus is that I know in a way that maybe they have not already known him, and helping them learn how it's just part of a journey that we're all just growing on. And that's what's called being a disciple. You're just following Jesus. None of us know it all. It's a process. And so then this class, We Disciple, is, okay, no matter our personality, no matter the shoulds that we hear that we think we need to do, how do we tell others about Jesus and then help them grow in their faith? Because we can tell a whole lot of people about Jesus, and they might make a sidewalk conversion in my front porch or front yard. But if I don't then continue either myself or help them get connected to people who are going to help them grow, then it's like the seed that was thrown on the hard soil, or rocky soil, or whichever other soil. So looking at it of sharing our stories helps us remove barriers of what we think we are not capable of doing in sharing our faith. And that was a big part of the We Disciple class. And I'm really excited to hear that we did this series, because it really amps me up of I really want to offer this class again, because it's really to help us just get out of our head and just make the decision for intentional conversation. And let's talk about all the things that you might think that get in your way. So with you talking about sharing your story, I thought, Emily, since you haven't been here with us before, how do you share your story with someone who maybe doesn't know Jesus, or either he's not even on their radar, or maybe they've come to church and you're like, you don't even know why they're here, and they don't even know why they're here. How do you share your story with them?
I definitely, I like asking questions to learn more about that person. And I think from hearing their story, I think through my own story and try to identify any areas that maybe are similar. I think I grew up in a Christian household personally, but I don't think that dismisses the fact that I haven't had hard times in my life, or have walked through trials. And so I still think there's that conversation that I can have and say, you know, I can walk through that and have hope and faith because I've seen God help me through that. And so I think having opportunities to share or even at least write down your story helps too, because if you've never shared it, it can be really intimidating. Like, where do I even start? But I think having practice, like I said, even writing it down, just knowing and identifying the areas that God has been with you and walked you through hard times, I think helps a lot. So yeah, I just like to identify those common ground areas. And being able to encourage them, point them towards scripture that maybe even helped me in those times.
I hear you have a few questions, but I'm going to go with this one. No, I have two questions, but I want the first one. I think I read some emotion in how you were telling it, that it was, what about you talking about sharing your story? I feel like, and I'm making it up, but you might have had someone in mind, or there's something that connected that emotionally for you. What
I saw it too.
What about it do you think?
Sure. I mean,
if that's all right.
Yeah. So like growing up in a Christian home, I heard my parents talk about, you know, the Bible and their faith, and they were very good about taking us to church. But it probably was when I was a teenager that I feel like I came to that own crossroads in my faith where I really had to make it my own and realize, you know, my parents' faith isn't going to get me anywhere. It's not going to enhance my relationship with the Lord. And we had to walk through some stuff as a family. And that's when I was like, wow, I could really turn to God and serve him for the rest of my life. Or I could just walk away from him. Like I could have nothing to do with him. And I think no matter if you're in a Christian household or not, you come to that point some place in your life. And it does carry some emotion because I feel like it was the best decision I ever made. So I never looked back and regretted that at all.
And it my second is this form of it. It seems like it's created the ability to empathize, to have empathy, show concern and compassion. And would you agree with that? And then what, for both of you, not trying to take over, but
no, it's good.
For both of you, what role do you feel like, not just hearing, but understanding? And so compassion, empathy, and probably a few other words, emotional intelligence even, plays for you in your ability to connect with people, and then, I mean, showing Christ and allowing them to be a draw to Christ, I guess. So empathy, compassion, these kind of things in these conversations, pulling on some of your own stuff, I guess.
Sure. I don't know. I always used to think my emotions were like too much, but I feel like my heart breaks for people, like when I hear their like trials or the hard stuff that they're going through. I feel like it became even more like that probably after I became a mom.
Right. Yep.
I feel like maybe that's natural for some of us, but
I say yep like I'm a mom, but as a feeling responsible, I experience, absolutely,
and just being reminded that, you know, they also they're God's children too. Like He created them, and He wants the best for them too. And I strive for people to see that and to recognize that they have a Heavenly Father that loves them.
I think what Emily does a really good job of is, because God has given her such a sense of awareness of people and that compassion and empathy that's there. I'm going to say a blanket statement that I don't love, but I think that sometimes we act, or people will treat our story as only valid and important if we have a big come to Jesus moment, like, you know, God did this big thing or whatever. And those are great stories. You know, God has redeemed and saved, and those are big stories. But there is something, or not but, yet, there is also something in that she made a decision as a teenager, when I was making quite different decisions as a teenager. Also, though, I was raised in a Christian home that was just falling apart, and you said you went through trials then, and I couldn't believe, I didn't believe that Jesus loved me for me. It was all works driven. Everything from our appearance and everything, how we carried ourselves. And a lot of that honestly just came from what my family had come from, and just, you know, trying to look the part in as genuine of a way as you can. But so I was just looking to be accepted in all the wrong places. And Emily was able, with the help of the Lord, to make a decision in high school that, as for me and my house of me, I will follow the Lord. And then stuck with that. That doesn't say she hasn't been tempted to sin, wanted to sin, at times questioned God's faithfulness, questioned if she's hearing him, or, you know, any of those kind of things. She had to wrestle out her faith, and has gotten to where she is, and has chosen to continue to follow him. And that is huge. It's really, really big.
I agree.
I wish I could say that in my life, that I made that decision back then and said, it's settled, I'm following him. But I didn't make it till decades later in my life. And with that, she has maintained this awareness of kind of the, I say the statement, but for the grace of God, there go I, right? And you can see that God has kept her and helped her nurture her relationship with him, and has kept her from things that now she's watching people go through, and she gets a bird's eye view of that to be able to bring the hope of Jesus into it. And it doesn't matter that you haven't actually walked through X, Y, or Z, but you've been a human and had, you know, Jesus was human. Jesus didn't walk through all of those things. He avoided and was able to make the right decision when he was tempted with all the things, but his empathy was off the charts, you know? And so that's what I see in how you minister to, you know, again, being in kids ministry, it's the kids you're ministering to, but the families and the parents and blended families, broken families, all the different things that you're seeing in our kids ministry department, and who you minister to is big.
I would say a verse that's encouraged me a lot is Galatians 2:20. You know, it's not I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And I think having that as like a daily reminder, it's not my life. Like it's not about me. You know, I still wrestle with that for sure. I want to close my garage door and don't want to talk to the person on the plane. But keeping that verse in mind and perspective, and you know, and now having kids, I'm like, oh, I want my kids to be about this too. That's right. So it's an encouraging one to me.
That's awesome. I love it.
Got anything?
I got nothing.
You
guys answered my question.
Okay.
I love it.
Let me think about.
I have something. I was going to say, like, the conversations reminded me of my own family fact. It makes me think, like, don't dismiss invitation to church either. That could go a long way when it comes to evangelizing. My great grandma was a single mom during the Great Depression, and she had 5 kids, and just living life on her own with the kids. And a neighbor invited the kids to go to Sunday school at their church. And I don't really know the full picture of like what that relationship looked like, if it was like a daily, you know, check-in with them or what, but they invited them, and my great grandma let them go. And because of that invitation, their lives changed. And they eventually, my great grandma went to church and gave her life to the Lord. And I like to think that, you know, the evangelism side of it was the invite to church. But then there was obviously like discipleship involved, because then it transformed my mom's family tree for them all to have relationships with the Lord and to see how has trickled down the line has been pretty cool. And I'm really
to some degree,
grateful
you're
for
sitting
that.
here because some random
absolutely.
person invited kids to kids church or to church.
It's so much of the story. And I think, again, when you talked about our job is our job is not to save them. That's God's part. Mm-hmm. And we minimize all of the little moments along the way.
And it's all the little
And
things.
it's all the little moments that lead to that moment. And I've said it so many times on here, so many people that have had a little moment in my life that never, ever, they went to the grave not knowing that it worked, that I got it, that I figured it out. And thanks to their role in that journey for me. And we don't know how often a question, a notice, a willingness to go to the mailbox at the same time, a willingness to, you feel like I'm supposed to say, can I pray for you? And it's the most awkward thing in the whole wide world, but you do it and they say yes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many times, like praying the way that we pray, in a relationship with Jesus versus, I don't know what the verses is, but like a, I lost my word, but
like a rote and prepared prayer.
Yes. Like we pray with such a freedom and a relationship with the Lord that when you pray with somebody that's not used to that only knows rote prayers, they're broken. They're just like, wow, I've never talked to God like that. Yeah, you can. Like those are amazing moments, but they're really scary.
Yeah.
But you just got to make the decision to go, like you just said, it's not I who live, but Christ in me. I don't deserve to have this. I want you to know him too. So it's just opening our mouths, and that we just never know where the person who invites the children to church, 100 years ago, is now trickling down to now she has 4 babies that she is raising to know Jesus, and it just keeps marching forward. Like that's amazing. And I love that. And even in the brokenness, if anybody's listening and says, I don't have that kind of family tree, or I was supposed to be the first generation of that, and now my family is broken. Okay, then we're going to pick up the pieces, and you keep marching forward, and you will continue to influence the generations after you with your faith, even in the broken.
It's literally my wife and I's plan. So I always tear up, but
you're allowed to tear up on this one. It's a big deal.
I always do.
Legacy.
We knew what we were coming from, and we had a literal conversation where we said together that we're starting over. We're starting a brand new family.
Yeah.
So that's possible is something I want someone to know. It takes will. It takes an absolute decision. But where you come from, while it will influence you for the rest of your life, the scars are there. The wounds can heal. The scars usually remain. But you can choose to go a different direction. Right. So I don't know, hopefully that's some form of encouragement for somebody who might be feeling less than or whatever. We all are genuinely. Some of us are maybe, I'll just leave that one alone. But it's possible. And when we began to follow Christ, and this is before we started following Christ, we just knew that we were making a conscious decision to not repeat the glaring and loud mistakes of what had happened in the way that we were raised. And it put us on a path to say, what is good? Let's find good. And we began to go to church, but we have no idea what we're looking for. And so that's when I got deployed, and that's where I became a follower of Christ, and how it kind of cascaded from there. But right now we have kids that believe because of this path. And, anyway, I don't have a conclusion to that other than
I just love it so much.
I think it's encouraging. So,
it's in that transformative road has not been easy. Like you just said, like the scars are still there. The influences of your past are still there. It's the grit and this is settled. God is God. Yep. Jesus is my Savior, and I surrender to it regardless.
And anytime right there, I love that. enough to interrupt you. Anytime that you come with, like, we just did a podcast on a question about hell and stuff, and my initial response that if you say, well, is once saved, always saved, or whatever, we've actually almost blew up at you coming in a door for no reason. I have very heated emotions over these things, and fundamentally, it's because I cannot comprehend those being valuable questions compared to what you just said. That there's a God who has completely changed my life. And I mean, utterly changed the entire trajectory of a family.
That's right.
And multiple families.
Yep.
And you're going to go, well, you know, if I get saved, then can I get out of it? Or whatever version of it. And I can't even comprehend that you would make up this ridiculous inane question.
Yeah.
I'm saying this is how it hits me.
Yes.
In comparison to this ridiculous, unbelievable, almost irresponsible grace given by God, that he would ask me to come and be a part. If there's heaven, great. I'll take it, but I'm going to follow him. He said he wanted me. That's all I need. I don't... well, you don't go to hell. Great. I don't want to go there anyway, so wonderful. Let's move on. Can I keep trying to, my words now are, can I keep trying to be like him? But early on, I didn't have words for it. How do I respond to this change, this thing, this ability to have any hope and to have any purpose for my future, some reason to exist? I'll do anything.
Yeah. And that right there in both of your life's journeys is the same question that then we present to someone in this quote unquote word of evangelism. It's just, he is who he is, and I'm not perfect. I'm far from it, but I know enough of him to go, I want you to know him too. And let's stop making excuses that I'm not cleaned up enough. I'm not ready. I want to, how saved do I have to be? Well, then you're not ready. If you're asking me that question, then you still haven't figured out who he really is and who we are in light of that. And just that journey that, again, our story, no matter how, and actually really, sometimes we like to tell this whole story from birth to today. and because we're like, when you drive by a car accident, you know, everybody slows down and they got to see what they can see. And then we got to kind of compare, oh, I saw this accident. Oh, I saw this. We do this thing, this one-upping or whatever.
My car wreck's bigger than yours.
Yeah, exactly. My car wreck is bigger than yours. So instead, if it was actually just the enough little tiny detail about my journey, about me, so that you hear about him, is where I need to be in sharing my story. Not that I'm ashamed of it. It's, we all like to talk about ourselves way too much. And what you said when you first let in is you like to start by asking questions. You're leading with questions because people do like to talk about themselves. My goal is to get you to talk about yourself. I can bring a little hint of connection through my journey and then give you a whole lot of Jesus into your journey. That's evangelism. So then I don't have to know a whole lot. I just know I love him, and I'm learning how much he loves me, and you deserve to know him too. And then we all know behind the scenes, God deserves to be glorified by you, so we need to get you right because you need to be worshiping this God that we serve, you know? But I hope that we're just encouraged that evangelism doesn't have to be a scary thing. It doesn't have to be this, I need to know theology as well as Pastor Greg does. I need to have, all my stuff together and all of my, I don't know. I need to be in ministry full time. I need to be a pastor, whatever. It's like, no,
all your laundry's done.
All your laundry's done.
I don't know, whatever
right.
else.
All the things. My kids are
all
perfect.
The trips planned. Exactly.
Yeah. Like my kids aren't perfect. You're going to see that. Emily's kids aren't perfect, but they're just trying to love Jesus and raise their kids to know Jesus and help you know Jesus. And that needs to be our heart as believers who know him. And so I hope as you're listening today, you're encouraged by this series. If you missed one of the sermons or you don't remember it, go back. It's 2 weeks, Be Bold series, and get, I guess, on fire really of the passion we have for Jesus and what he's done in your life needs to be spread to the world around you, whatever that looks like.
And I would add in from the introvert, maybe even social anxiety side, maybe neurodivergent side, we can allow ourselves to be pushed some. Being pushed some doesn't mean you're being kicked off or thrown over the edge, but to allow us, myself included, to feel some discomfort that I am choosing, not ushered in by someone else.
Yeah.
Because I can become very almost,
You won't
get away from me, you're never going to do this. But I want to, among our paths on getting better is sometimes to challenge ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe it is, I say hi to the neighbor.
Meandering to the mailbox is what I was thinking. You could meander
Right.
when the neighbor's there.
That I do still currently interpret it as like, that sounds terrible. Doesn't mean that it, one, necessarily will ever be great, but it also doesn't mean that I can't do some, that I can't, just allow ourselves, to the degree that you can at the moment, but challenge your degree. Allow yourself to continue to grow, not just in the safe places, but find some, not dangerous, but a little bit something so you can take those, allow yourself to be challenged, because that may be the next path for my walk, your walk, in following Jesus and obeying.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, you go to the mailbox and I'll strike up a conversation in the airplane. Okay? And then we'll see how it goes.
Notes.
Yeah, compare notes, see how it goes.
I think you're going to win.
You're going to just let me win that easy? Well, thanks guys for being here, and we hope really that you're encouraged. Have a wonderful week, and we'll chat again next time. Thanks again for joining us today. We would love for you to tell others about the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to it too, because this will help others find out about it. If you missed it before, we love to hear from you. So if you have any stories to tell about how the message impacted you, or maybe you have a question or comment, make sure you email us at podcast@goodnews.church. Y'all, this is my favorite day of the week. So go give away what you just learned, and we'll chat again next time.